survivors when a jetliner goes down, but in the case of Air Ontario Flight 363, there are 45 people still alive.
On March 10, 1989, Air Ontario Flight 1363 failed to take off from Dryden, Ontario, and crashed into a forest, killing 24 of the 69 passengers on board. The Transportation Safety Board of Canada's examination revealed a catastrophic chain of circumstances that resulted in the Fokker F-28 taking off with ice on its wings. What happened to the flight? What did the investigation reveal? Stick till the end of the video to find out your answers. Hello and welcome to Plane Crashes Explained, where we discuss some of the most mind-blowing reasons and facts behind the most heinous plane crashes. Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so you won't miss future updates. Without further ado, let's get straight into this. Air Ontario Flight 1363 was a Fokker F-28 1000 fellowship flight operated by Air Ontario that crashed in Dryden, Ontario on March 10, 1989, shortly after takeoff from Thunder Bay to Winnipeg via Dryden. The plane crashed after just 15 seconds because it couldn't gain enough height to clear the trees beyond the end of the runway, owing to ice and snow on the wings, killing 21 of the 65 passengers and 3 of the 4 crew members. Some survivors could flee the plane on their own, while others were escorted to safety. The inquiry showed that an unserviceable auxiliary power unit, APU, and no accessible external power unit at Dryden Regional Airport contributed to dubious decision-making, which were major factors contributing to the accident of Flight 1363. After adding the extra passengers and discharging 1,280 kilograms, or 2,822 pounds of fuel, Flight 1363 eventually took off from Thunder Bay at 11:55, an hour late. The fact that the plane's auxiliary power unit, APU, was not operating further complicated matters. This generator provides electricity to the aircraft when the engines are shut down, and is used to ignite the engines before taxiing. The little airfield in Dryden lacked the necessary technology to jumpstart the engines, so if they were turned off during the layover, it would be difficult to restart them, and the plane would be detained there permanently, forcing the journey to be canceled. This meant the pilots would have to undertake a hot refueling with one engine operating, a risky technique. In actuality, the minimum equipment list indicated that the APU had to be operational for the plane to take off, but neither the pilots nor the dispatcher had access to the F-28's minimum equipment list and were unaware of this. Captain Morwood refueled the jet 45 minutes later after arriving in Dryden, and was then seen having a heated talk with Air Ontario officials about the issue. Captain Morwood apologized to his passengers and prepared to depart Dryden, as he became increasingly concerned about the increasing delays and weather deterioration. Even though snow was falling, the pilots chose not to de-ice the plane. This was because it was prohibited to de-ice the plane while the engine was running, since this may allow antifreeze fumes to enter the cabin. And if they turned off the engine, they wouldn't be able to restart them, forcing the trip to be canceled and passengers rebooked. Furthermore, ice was never a major issue during their bush flying experience. A Fokker F-28 fellowship, on the other hand, is not a bush aircraft. If the pilots had read the operations handbook, they would have realized that taking off with any ice on the wings was prohibited, because the F-28 had far fewer aerodynamic margins than most other airliners. Flight 1363 appeared slow as it went down the runway, and took longer than normal to take off. Even after spinning, the main wheels remained on the ground for a while until the pilots injected additional power and drew back even more. As soon as the jet took off, it wouldn't be there for long. It began tumbling from side to side, its wings practically scraping the ground, and soared past the runway's end at an altitude of only 15 feet. The plane instantly began falling into the valley at the end of the runway, striking the tops of trees with the landing gear and wingtips. Flight attendants yelled for passengers to brace themselves. The F-28 crashed into another clump of trees a few hundred meters beyond the end of the runway, tearing off the left wing. The jet crashed into the snow, splitting up into 3 main portions and erupting in flames. The hit killed many individuals on the plane's left front, including both pilots, but the bulk escaped and were forced to flee in a desperate hurry. Many people were critically hurt when their chairs ripped out of their mountings and collided. Other passengers struggled to liberate those who were stuck as the smoke and heat intensified. However, once everyone had exited the jet, some of whom had suffered serious burns risked hypothermia while waiting for help in the frigid wilderness. By the time rescue personnel had completed searching the accident scene, it was evident that 22 passengers had died and 47 had survived. 2 more died in the hospital, bringing the total death toll to 24. The strong post-crash fire severely damaged both the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder. As a result, none of these units could be read. As a result, the investigation was almost exclusively based on witness accounts about the disaster and the circumstances preceding up to it. The inquiry indicated that an unserviceable auxiliary power unit, APU, and no available external power unit at Dryden Regional Airport resulted in dubious decision-making, which was a major cause of Flight 1363's tragedy. If the engines had been switched off, they could not have been restarted since the APU was unserviceable and there was no external power. As a result, the port engine was left running during the Dryden stay. That afternoon, snow was falling lightly, and a covering of 0.6 to 1.3 centimeters of snow had built on the wings. The wings required to be de-iced before departure. However, the Fokker F-28 aircraft should never be de-iced while the engines are running due to the risk of harmful gases entering the cabin. As a result, the pilot did not request that the wings be de-iced. While airline guidelines were unclear at the time, the later report was harshly critical of this action. Fuel was required to be loaded, which was done with the engine running and people on board, known as a hot refuel. Offloading and reloading passengers would have taken a long time, and the longer the plane sat on the ground, the more de-icing fluid was needed on the wings. Captain Morwood chose to have the aircraft fueled while the engine was operating and passengers were on board to avoid further delay and the danger of a buildup on the wings. Transport Canada did not ban this method at the time and does not restrict it presently. Airline instructions were likewise uneven. The accident investigation was merged into a court probe presided over by Judge Virgil P. Moshansky. His investigation demonstrated that competitive pressures from commercial deregulation reduced safety standards and that many of the industry's shoddy operations and dubious processes put the pilot in a tough situation. According to the investigation, the aircraft should not have been scheduled to refuel at an airfield that lacked the necessary equipment, and neither training nor manuals adequately informed the pilot of the hazards of ice on the wings. Moshansky accused Transport Canada for allowing Air Ontario to grow into the operation of larger, more sophisticated planes without first finding flaws in their existing fleet. Many significant changes were made to the Canadian aviation regulations following the crash of Air Ontario Flight 1363. These included new refueling and de-icing procedures and a slew of new regulations aimed at improving the overall safety of all future flights in Canada. These specifically pointed to the decreasing efficiency of some de-icing fluids over time and the rising use of Type II fluid. This combination contains polymerizing agents which prolong the de-icing action. Delays and adjustments to de-icing protocols following the Canadian Aviation Safety Board's dissenting report on the 1985 disaster of Aero Flight 1285, which may have also included ice, although a different minority report suggested that an explosion occurred, were another reason for Flight 1363's tragedy. Both disasters harmed public trust in the CASB's investigation, prompting the Canadian government to shut down the CASB 1 year after the Flight 1363 disaster. The Transportation Safety Board of Canada, a more independent and multimodal investigative organization, took over the CASB. The incident was covered in the 9th season of Canadian National Geographic Channel show Mayday, also known as Air Emergency in the United States, and Aircrash Investigation in the rest of the globe. Cold Case is the title of the episode. Some mistakes are always left unchecked, which come back but with the worst possible outcome. The accident could have been averted if only the maintenance and security systems of the airport and the aviation companies were a bit more reliable. What would you do if you know who was the culprit? Let us know in the comments section if you liked the video. Until the next video, take care and goodbye.